True Confessions with our guest today, Stacey Uhrig.
Hi everyone, welcome Stacey. I am Laura Brown and I am the owner of ODAA Virtual Assistant Agency. And we are an agency focused on small business and women in business and really empowering women to build their business and grow. We help in the back end with all those tasks so that you can grow and focus on business and really just being there and available in your business as a strong, powerful leader and woman in business. So we're here to help you
Awesome.
out.
Yes. And I'm Angelic with Lady Powerhouse Solutions. And Lady Powerhouse Solutions is a heart centered approach to offering project and event management to women entrepreneurs on fire and lighting the world up with their passion and drive to achieve the missions in the most authentic way possible.
Wonderful. And together we are Fempreneur True Confessions podcast. We'll get through it. Our mission is to empower women in business and life to live authentically and support each other instead of competing with each other. We do model this authenticity through our business and our personal relationships. We empower other women to do the same.
Yeah. And so we want to normalize. That's why we started the podcast, is to normalize the struggles and share the lessons that women entrepreneurs learn, with the common goal of lifting other women up and not tearing others down. And to normalize what it looks like when women succeed at supporting each other and building up each other's confidence, and encouraging them to use their gifts, and passions to fulfill their life's calling. So we're here to create and maintain and grow a sisterhood that believes in an abundance mindset, sharing our struggles and helping each other rise to our highest potential.
Wonderful. And we are here with Stacey, and I'm going to butcher it. Uhrig?
It is
Stacey
Uhrig.
You
Uhrig.
got it. You
Okay,
got
good.
it.
I remembered. I heard it and then was like, okay, I'm going to get this right. Wonderful. And she is our amazing guest for today. Now, Angelique met Stacey at a book club in January of last year. And they hit it off and decided to connect outside of the book club, which is always wonderful, ladies. The rest is history. Stacey is a certified trauma recovery coach and has been pivotal in Angelique's recovery from past trauma. She educates on what developmental trauma is and how it shows up in adulthood, keeping you stuck. She helps people understand narcissism and how intergenerational trauma plays a role in our lives. She identifies patterns and core beliefs that are developed in childhood and teaches them how to flip those beliefs as adults, leading to more peace, joy, and connection. Stacey also hosts her own podcast, This Meaningful Life, based on the concept that everyone has a story. It's your unique personal story that makes your life meaningful. So
Yes.
welcome, Stacey.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited. I know it's been a year.
That's really hard to believe, actually.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I believe it because I've done a lot of hard work
That's
since then.
amazing.
But it feels like it's been millions of years for
Wow.
me. But yeah, I was a little surprised too. I was like, wow, it's been a year, because I
Yeah.
went back and actually looked when we connected. Because I wanted to be accurate about that. So, but one thing I don't know about you, Stacey, is your why. Like, why did you get into
Mm.
trauma coaching?
I think if you ask any trauma coach, they're pretty much going to say the same thing. Like, you do what you know.
Yeah.
And, for me personally, I had a lot of developmental trauma. Uniquely, I always say, because it really started once I was 10 or 11. I feel like the years of 0 to 10, 11 were actually pretty decent. But really around 10, 11, things just took a turn. And I was that person that by 15 was probably earlier than 15, was really walking with a tremendous amount of anxiety, but I didn't know what it was because it was in the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
People weren't talking about that. There weren't, TikToks and YouTube and
Right.
Instagram reels to learn as a
Exactly.
child what these things are. And there was such a stigma. So I really walked around very stuck with actually a lot of really unique health challenges at a young age. And that really continued into my 30s until I really started to do some hard work. I'd always been doing work. I'd always been seeing therapists since I was 15, but nothing was getting better. And everything kind of took a turn at around 31, where I feel like I had my first nervous breakdown. And, 20 years later, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Wow.
made
We're about the
sure
same
I
age.
was going to do something with that knowledge, all the knowledge I gained recovering from that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think, you hit the nail on the head. Like most people, our why comes from something that is very personal and that we've been through, and we understand and empathize. So we want to help others, get through that. And, not having that support. I mean, we do now. It's mental health is a little less stigmatized than it used to be. Not completely, I still get, people's reaction of, are you seeing a therapist? They're like, they think that the only reason to go to therapist is there's something wrong with you. Well, newsflash, there's something wrong with all of us. None of us is perfect. We all have issues.
Right.
Sorry to burst your bubble. So we're talking a lot. We're saying this word trauma, like we're talking a lot about this. So define for our listeners what we're talking about when we're talking about trauma.
Sure. So it's funny because I have a sign right here in my office, and it talks about what trauma is. And basically, trauma is never the event. Trauma is not a situation or a circumstance. It's what happens internally, mind, body, psyche, spiritually, and how long it lasts. That is the trauma, right? So if you think about it, I'm not going to talk right now about like acute trauma, meaning like an accident or a war situation. I'm going to talk about, like a developmental trauma, like something that may have happened before you were 8 or 10 years old. If you watched something or experienced something as a child that people would label as traumatic, once the event is over, the event is over. But it's how it leaves you feeling about yourself. It's leaving you feeling about others. And it's how it leaves you seeing the world in a way that is unproductive. That is the lingering trauma. And trauma can linger in a lot of ways. There are a lot of after effects. There are emotional after effects. There are relational, meaning how do you connect with people? How do you connect with yourself? There are biological after effects of long endured trauma. There are like neuropsychological after effects and bio-neural after effects. So it can really affect the way you think, the way you feel, the way you process information. It has a massive impact on your system. And how much of an impact it has really has to do with how frequently were you in scenarios that were causing this trauma? What was the duration of it and how intense was it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
But it's important if I can share, when we talk about trauma, I think the biggest misconception about trauma is that trauma has to be aggressive, abusive, or violent. Trauma can be those things.
It can, yes.
But trauma is anything that leaves the person feeling unseen, unheard, insignificant, unimportant, unsafe, which ultimately yields unworthy, undeserving, and not enough, which feels like a threat to our system because as young children, we just need a handful of things. keep me fed, keep me hydrated, keep me safe structurally, right? And emotionally, and keep me clean. But more important than any of that, it's keep me connected. Make sure that I know I belong and that I'm worthy of affection and connection. And when that feels like it's at risk or at threat, immediately your body's going to go into go mode and your mind's going to go into go mode in benefit of you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the trauma begins. If that flip is switched all the time, or switch is flipped all the time, it's going to really have quite the impact on your system.
Wow.
Interesting. That's
when
you think about certain things. I mean, the obvious traumas that people would see, but sometimes even the littlest things will make you feel a certain way, that you're not pinpointing those as traumas or things that are, that you really recognize.
I didn't. Stacey had to point it out to me.
And when I did point it out to you, did it make sense? Did things click?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't really see that as trauma because of the way that it was framed for me as a child by my parent. It was framed.
Here's the problem. I have a book right here. I always have like a stack of books next to me.
I know.
This is the book I'm reading through right now, which is a really meaty book. It's called The Myth of Normal. And the subtitle is Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. So part of the reason why we're so stuck as a society is because things that we experience that leave us feeling unseen, unheard, insignificant, unimportant, are kind of normalized. Like, well, that's just the way our family is, or that's just the way things are.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had a person I worked with many years ago who was having relational issues. And obviously I knew it was trauma based. And there had been a lot of physical abuse in her household. So there was a lot of beatings, some broken bones, blood sometimes. And I would say, well, don't you think that this is part of the reason, or do you think it could be part of the reason? And she goes, everybody beat their kids on my block. That's just the way it was.
That just gave me goosebumps.
So like the idea behind that statement was there's nothing unique about us. So why should I be so fucked up? If I am, everybody else should be too.
Yeah.
Because this was our normal. Yeah. And so therefore, ... I can't complain because comparatively, I ain't get anything different from anybody else.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the myth of normal, it's like, well, but the human body is not designed for that level of nonsense. So the trigger is going to be on and the switch is going to be on, and you are going to have things like extreme overwhelm, anxiety. You're going to be way outside of your window of tolerance, and you're going to be feeling all kinds of effects from that. And if you don't resolve that, you're going to get very, very stuck.
Sure. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense.
It does. It does. And so I know you talk a lot about that there's a gift in every challenge and a purpose in all pain. And that's, kind of one of the things you share. But why is that message important to you to get out?
That message is important because when I'm trying to help people flip their mindsets, often people are coming in a very victimized mode, right? This is happening to me. And I actually just did a post about this today on social media. The reality is really, it's a personal philosophy. I don't believe anything happens to us. I believe that life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for you, for whatever lessons you're meant to learn in this particular lifetime.
I have that on my phone. It's your little screensaver thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, that's right. I did put that up. And the reality is you can almost see that in any case you turn around to. So if you're a sibling, let's just say, and you and your sibling or siblings went through a challenging life experience, some sort of adverse experience within your household. Let's just say a parent's divorce, for example. And let's say there's 3 or 4 of you in the family as children. Each one of you is going to process that information and relate to that information differently. Very often when we're younger, there's a lot of frustration and resentment that you didn't see it this way. How could you not see it that way? Of course, that's the way it happened. Right. And now there's like this division versus this unity. But the reality is whatever you're meant to gain from that experience is divinely designed specifically for you. And all of your life lessons and your life challenges are divinely designed for you. And instead of getting frustrated that the other people don't get it the way that we do, understanding that it's meant for me, and we might be raised in the same family from the same people, but we each have our own journey. So when I know that to be true, when you look at things like, there's a gift in every challenge, purpose in the pain, if you can get far enough away from your greatest challenge, and I just moved my whiteboard out, but I was just doing this exercise with a client yesterday. We kind of break the whiteboard into 3 columns, and in the middle is the event, right? You can call them we can call it event, whatever it was that is a milestone that we keep focusing on. This was the problem. This was the problem. This was the problem. I try to do a pre and a post. Let's talk about who you were pre. They can tell me all the words to describe who they were. Are you the same person? Let's look at what this event did. How did it shape you, change you, help you evolve, and who have you turned into? Now, in this particular case, I was working with a young gentleman who's taken some time off from college, and we've done some hypnosis work together. And his biggest concern is that he's going to go back to school and face the same challenges. And what I'm trying to show him is what happened that caused you to stop? What are all the things that were your blocks, that were these traumas? Who were you beforehand? And who are you now? You're not going back into that scenario, the same person. Until we started doing this exercise, he couldn't really see that. Now he's starting to say, without this cataclysmic chasm here in the middle, I couldn't have switched here. I'd still be stuck over here. I wouldn't have become self-reliant. I wouldn't have had to set boundaries. I wouldn't have had to fall into my authenticity and say no and do things for myself without this particular challenge. That's the gift. It's painful. Our biggest teachers are our greatest pain, but there's purpose in it. So that's kind of where those 2 little sound bites come from. And when you can draw it out and show it to the person, it becomes usually very, very clear.
And it's interesting because I was actually just having this conversation. I have 3 sisters. They're sisters in some form or another, whether they're sister-in-laws or half-sisters or sister-in-law once removed. Anyway, they're sisters, and we hang out in our little group. And we went on a trip last weekend, and that's one of the things that actually came up was how differently one of my sisters has an older sister or younger sister, I can't remember, but how they perceived their relationship with their father so very differently. So very differently. And then I have another sister who has an older sister, or maybe it's younger sister. Either way, another sister, and she has perceived her relationship with her mom. Her mom was not the same mom that my sister had.
I understand.
They had different moms, and just there was resentment towards the mother for one sister, while the other sister's like, we had a great relationship.
But here's the reality: is sometimes trauma is the experience, but very often it's not having a need met.
Right.
So if your perception of what that need is different from someone else, you're either going to harp on it or you're not. There are 4 of us in my set of siblings,
Mhm.
and each one of us has a very, very different perception of our childhoods. Now there's a break. Two of us have the same parents, and two of us have the same, like all four of us have the same mom. Okay. But
Right.
two of us have one dad and the other two have another dad. And the experiences were very different. But going into it, each of our needs are different.
Yeah.
And so if you feel your need wasn't met, you're going to feel whatever the feelings are: resentment, sadness, heartbreak, grief, whatever. Someone else might say, well, that wasn't my experience at all. You can't really get mad with
Right.
that person.
Right.
I used to be frustrated. I
Mm-hmm.
used to be angry that, we didn't have this concept of united we stand, divided we fall. And I would hold on to that. And I would,
Mm-hmm.
how do they not see that? Like, how do they
Yeah.
not get it? And then I realized, because it's not the movie that they're watching.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
We have that same, my sister's 8 years older, and we have that same dynamic where my sister has said all my life, the same woman that raised me did not raise you. You had a completely
Yeah.
different mother. And I'm always telling her, like, do you think I didn't experience my own shit? Like,
Yeah.
we had the same mother in certain aspects. Like, please believe what you experienced, I experienced in a different way. And she's got a huge resentment towards our mom, where my mom was what I had. I was connected at the hip with her. So we've even gotten to a point where I'm like, I know you don't have anything nice to say, and I may never understand why you can't get to that point of, our mother being okay because she sacrificed a lot for us. But we can't discuss it because
Well, it's so interesting, because when I do the hypnosis with my clients, that we do this methodology called rapid transformational therapy. It's a therapeutic model that's done in hypnosis to get to the subconscious. So let's just say, hypothetically, someone wanted to get to the root of their resentment and their anger, right? Like, they think they've worked it out, but yet they still feel it. Like, they've
Yeah.
forgiven and they've done all these things, but like they literally just can't let it go.
Mhm.
What's happening so often is, it's not, let's just throw a number out, it's not the 43-year-old that's still angry. It's the
Right.
5-year
Right.
old. It's the
Yeah.
4-year-old. It's the 2-year
Yeah.
old. It's however old the person was when this feeling came in. That feeling has not been resolved yet. So what I help people do is go back to those moments, feel the shit, feel the feelings. How did you
Yeah.
feel? And I have a really specific list of questions. I'm going to read them out to you that I always ask. And I think they're really poignant when we're going back to these moments. I have them say, at, let's just say 5 years old. At 5 years old, I was in this particular scene,
Mhm.
and the feelings and emotions I experienced at that time were X. Okay. And at 5 years old, I was really ... angry, sad, resentful, whatever. And the
Mm-hmm.
only thing I could do at 5 was, because how limited are you, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And at 5 years old, I was all these things. I was feeling all these things. And therefore, that must mean what? What does that mean about you? What agreements, what core beliefs did you make about yourself in that
Yeah.
moment? I'm helpless. I'm powerless. I'm unseen. I'm
Mm-hmm.
unheard. I'm not enough. Right. And in that moment, because of this experience, my 5-year-old self decided what? When I can get people to go through that journey over and over and over again with, say, 3, 4, 5 different experiences,
Mhm.
then I can also have them go through that journey and say, but that's not me, because I'm not 5 anymore. I'm
Yeah.
43. And
Yeah.
here's what I know about myself now. And yes, that's exactly how my 5-year-old self felt. And we need to honor and acknowledge that. But come here, 5-year-old. And then we go
Mm-hmm.
through a whole bunch of visualization where the 5-year-old is with the 43-year-old.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
43-year-old can say, I got you. I get
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
That was hard, but come with me now. You're not stuck
Yeah.
back there anymore. You know, there's
Yeah.
parts of our brain that are not time bound. There's no understanding of time and there's no concept of time. So it's almost to the system as though it's still happening.
Yeah.
So when we can talk to it at the subconscious level and bring it along, and we
Yes.
can literally leave the past in the past, but it's very hard to do at a conscious level.
Wow.
It's really powerful.
Well,
it's
when you're
cool to
dealing
watch.
with siblings who see things, when you're dealing with siblings who see things so differently, I could see that but then it's one of those things where, you know, I again, if I'm dealing with my own, I can't necessarily help you with yours. Like, you feel the way you do,
Yes.
and we'll argue back and forth because she's like, you have such faith in the same woman, but
here's the question I would ask.
I'm like, you're so angry at her, but why are you so angry?
Why does it matter?
And so
like, who does it matter to? Because here's what I find is, and this is another sign I have in my office, we're constantly seeking other people's validation in order for our truth to have been true.
Yeah.
I want you to validate for me that you know my truth is spot on. Well, you're going to have a hard time doing that if your experience was different. So the sign I have behind me says, know your truth and trust your knowing. And the reason why I created that is it's okay for your truth to be your truth.
Yes.
We have to stop looking outside for this external validation.
Yes.
If you know it's true, and that was your perception, your interpretation, your experience. And here's the kicker, because this is where people get blocked, and you trust yourself. You know, one of the biggest after effects, if you will, of trauma is self-doubt.
Yeah.
Right? So if you know your truth and you trust yourself, you trust that knowing, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Yes.
It just doesn't. So, you know, we really are always constantly looking. I did that for decades. So angry at people that they weren't listening to me. If I feel like if you really hear me, then you'll finally say to me, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
It was that bad. At one point, I just had this huge aha moment, and I was like, I do not need other people's validations of my truth in order for it to be true. It's my experience.
Yeah.
Once I surrendered to that, it was like a whole layer of pissed offness just got shed. Because I didn't really care if you agreed with me or not. It didn't matter.
No. Yeah.
It was a very freeing aha moment for me. And that's where I try to get my clients to so often. If they're having that conversation, what you're having with me, Laura, I'll keep touching the bubble. Why does it matter? Let's get to the core of that. Why does it matter? And they're like, well, I need her validation. Well, why?
Why?
Right? Because I don't trust myself. I don't trust my truth. So we're constantly.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm like, I don't want to discuss it because I lived what I lived. You lived what you lived.
And I have
we had to come to common ground.
A similar, not exactly same situation, but my father had a very different relationship. I have 3 older brothers. And so their opinion, their relationship with my father was not very good. He was mean to them. He was, he cussed, and he would kick one brother, and he just wasn't very nice. But I was the princess, and so he treated me like that. That's how and so my relationship with him, and they weren't trying to make me feel guilty or like, how can you love him so much when he's such a bad person? But there's a certain amount of stigmatism there, like, but he was so cruel. How can you love him? How could he be this wonderful person to you? Because my experience in my relationship was totally different.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry that you had that
so often for the other sibling.
Yeah.
Because the message, at least at the younger version, automatically accepts is there's something wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm deficient. if I was just X, then maybe dot, 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 I could get the love and affection, all this unconditional worth that I
Right.
deeply seek because it's what makes us human, right? We
Yeah.
want to know
Yes.
that we are important,
Yeah.
especially to our family
Mhm.
of origin. And when
Yeah.
that is broken, it's a huge grief.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I
And
can't rely on you, who can I rely on? And if I can't
yeah.
rely on you, and this is really like a 3, 4, 5, 8 year old thinking this, if I can't rely on you to love me for me, I
Mm-hmm.
must be
Mhm.
pretty messed up. And
Right.
now all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I don't trust myself. I'm going to disconnect from myself a little bit because I don't even feel worthy of being connected to.
Yeah.
That is fundamental 101. We've got a
Mm.
DEF CON 10 situation here.
Yeah.
And when people don't see that, not only does the rupture to self happen, but you can't have a bridge to someone else better than the bridge you have to yourself. So now, if the bridge to yourself is broken, and by the way, it's not because of anything you did, it's because the person who we are relying on is limited,
Yes.
right? I do a lot with intergenerational trauma. It doesn't start with our parents, trust me. It goes
Yes.
way back, right? So if my bridge is now broken to myself because I assumed that
Mhm.
I was flawed, because I
Mm-hmm.
assume as a young child, if you've chosen to have children, that you wanted me and you're capable and you have all of these skills, which as parents, we know actually not always the case. We're all
Right.
struggling to parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, then my relationship to you is also broken. And the filter through which I see the world is now fractured. So when I'm
Mm.
working with people, we're working on building the bridge back to self first, which inherently will start to naturally build a better bridge out to others, better relationships with others, and
Right.
my view and my of the world around me. It goes less victim mode, more I belong here mode.
Yeah. I know earlier you mentioned about going back, falling into your authenticity. Um,
Mm,
what was your own journey? How did you get to this
mm.
realization?
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about me shedding that layer and recognizing I didn't need other people's validation in order for my story to be true. I was hustling for affection from certain family members.
Hmm.
And I think I just got to the realization I'll never have it the way I need it.
Mhm.
I'm only going to get it at the level at which you can give it, which in itself is limited, not because
Yes.
of anything I did,
Right.
but because of how you were raised. And that is because of the way that your parents were raised and their parents were raised. And it trickles down and down and down and down. Nobody just wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be a crappy parent.
Right.
It just
Exactly.
doesn't happen. We do what
Uh-huh.
we know until, as I was just saying to my girlfriend on text, till we become the cycle breaker, until we say it stops with us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, on that note, with that, with the cycle breaking and
Mm,
things like that, as a parent, since all of our kids see us all kind of differently, and us saying, "Oh, well, hey, we want to make sure that we parent each of our kids the same way, or we're trying to break that cycle," is that kind of like a double-edged sword? Because our kids are still always going to see things differently through every event,
I
like
think it depends.
in.
When we talk about cycle breaking with my clients, it's really how do we, what are the family myths that we walk with? We're the Smith family. We follow the Jets. We go to church. We do this. We do that. We do the other thing. We talk about people behind their backs, but to your face, we're going to be really kind. Like sometimes there's like structural, systemic ways that families walk. Okay.
Hmm.
Sometimes hurt begets hurt. So if you're
Right.
living in a family where the only form of affection is non-affection or abuse or hurt,
Hmm.
and you
Hmm.
say that stops with me, it stops with me. Maybe you're seeing a situation where you had a parent that was burnt out and people pleasing 24/7. And you can see that that was not benefiting the parent. Okay. When it comes to our own children, at least what I've had to do in my own family is really recognize the uniqueness in each of my children. My children each have different needs.
Yeah.
And that's really, really, really clear to me. And this is why parenting is so hard. And I just had this conversation with somebody else. I'm like, these parenting books, they kill me because
Right.
you're reading, like if you were to read, I mean, my kids are 18 and 13, but if I were to have read a book 18, 20 years ago on how to parent, unknowingly, I'm assuming every kid's going to fit into whatever you base
Right.
that book on.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't
Right.
work. You have to know your kid. You have to really get in tune with who they are and how they tick and parent each one uniquely versus this broad thing that I just described before, which is we are the Smiths. We study, we get grades, we do this and we do that. And if you don't follow, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, maybe my kid
Right.
can't follow that way. Maybe
Yes.
my kid has a different need. When we're trying to get our kids to fit into these boxes, we're doing more damage because we're not seeing them
Yes.
for who they are. And what are they doing? They're throwing tantrums, they're acting out, they're doing all these things. And then we're punitive for it versus stopping and saying, let me hear exactly what you're saying. And do you mean this? ... I see you. I hear you. I get you. And you? I get you. And now I'm going to be the exhausted parent that's trying to meet the needs of everyone efficiently.
Yeah.
But I'm not throwing you in a particular box, right? So sometimes the cycle breaking comes down to breaking the way generationally things have been done.
Yeah. So when my kids were little, first grade and kindergarten, my oldest was in first grade and she was doing great. They loved school. She loved to read. And then my younger one went into kindergarten and she struggled and they were going to flunk her. But I knew this kid was smart. I'm like, she's smart. What's going on? And so I go in and talk to them. Come to find out, she just wouldn't. For some reason was afraid to answer. I know why she was afraid to answer. Afraid to answer the teacher's questions. She knew the answers, but she just wouldn't answer. And so they thought, well, she's not answering because she doesn't know, but she did know. And I was fortunate that happened very early on because it forced me to figure out why that was happening because I knew she was smart. And I found a book. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the author's name was Tobias. And what I learned from that was how different children learn differently. She learned differently. And so we just started working with her to learn everything differently. But we still had to work on, it's okay for you to speak up and be heard. And there are no wrong answers. And, that was one of the hardest things was she was afraid of being wrong and getting punished. And I said, even if you're wrong, the good thing is that you tried. And that's what's important to me and your teacher. And the teachers weren't punishing her, but her father would. So, that's where the fear was coming in. One of our, hi, Linda, one of our regular viewers have made a comment. I grew up an introvert in my mid-30s. I joined the Toastmasters and to find a way through and out of that personality. It truly did help me discover who I really was. Still a work in progress. We all are. We're all a work in progress. But fortunately, early on in my parenting journey, I learned that, they learn differently. I wonder what else they do.
But you know what? Like, how many parents would have been like, not on my watch. You're going to do it the way they say they're going to do it. And if you don't do it that way, there will be a punishment. Not every family would have been necessarily as understanding. And so then what does that do? I am wrong inherently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You get lucky with parents who have decided, like we knew in our family, breaking cycles with our son and breaking cycles with our friends and our friends' kids, and we knew. And there's still some, friends of mine and people around me and stuff where they don't necessarily break the cycle, and we're always going kind of back and forth about, I wish maybe you would think it doesn't have to be that way, like maybe not doing that. And so we're always just kind of trying to find ways to help each other again through it. Nobody has the magical answer, but at least breaking that cycle, like,
Well,
was
it's
it great in your
interesting.
family, and yeah.
I work with a gal that comes from a long line of cultural cycles, right? So you have your familial cycles, but then there's cultural cycles.
Yeah.
And often it comes with poverty or generational poverty. And this is a gal that believes that there's more available to her than what she's seen firsthand. And she's reaching for it and she keeps grabbing it and she keeps climbing up out of this space. And there's not a lot of, good for you and praise coming out of that.
Right.
It's, what do you think, you're better?
Yeah.
What do you think, you're better? And often that comes from fear from the other person of, I guess I could be trying differently,
Exactly.
but that would be work. And it's a
Mhm.
lot of work. What she's doing is a lot of work. It's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of self-development. It's a lot of work what she's putting in. But she wants different. She is by far my most ultimate cycle breaker. But we're constantly talking about those who are kind of bullying her for it or saying nasty things about
Yeah.
it or, trying to sabotage it because
Mhm.
it feels like a threat to the people who are
Exactly.
not willing to do the work to break the cycle. It's a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
Um,
an aunt who, when I went into business, even now to this day, I've been in business and we're making this work and doing this. And when she'll send me an email, she'll be like, "Oh, how's your little project going?" I'm like, "I love you," and I
yeah.
just keep going, like,
Little project, your little project.
like, and she's 80 and she's kind of stuck, and it was, we have certain cultural norms in the Jewish community, but also in our family, leveling. And so yeah, and I've learned through the years just like, "Oh, I love you," and I kind of keep pushing because I know for myself I'm confident, and she's who she is in her ways. But I
Yeah.
giggle because I see now that I'm older where when I was younger, what that would have really felt like
What
coming.
would that have felt like when you were younger? Just out of curiosity.
It would have felt like I was, again, not doing enough,
Right.
that I wasn't hitting that the idea of being in business, oh, that's a hobby or a project, or how cute, but when you can do the real work, like, kind of thing. So yeah, for us in family, it was that's it's not an overachievement thing, so it's not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It had
Mm-hmm.
to be an overachievement, like a great thing. So
Mm-hmm.
until you're in the millions and billions, it's a hobby.
Right.
Ah, nice. Very nice. So I know, earlier you talked about um, things being divinely designed for us, right?
Yeah.
Our life experiences. Um, is there a particular experience of your own that you look back and you go, okay, I can see that was divinely
I
designed for
mean,
me?
the one that comes to me the clearest is my infertility.
Mm,
Anybody that's been through an infertility journey will know it is a sad, painful, lonely road. It is devastating. Every single month, you literally feel like you're failing a test, even though you are doing everything that you're supposed to do. And it, I really have yet to meet one person who's gone through an infertility journey that was on that journey and at one point just didn't feel the most broken piece of themselves. I see Laura like nodding her head. And it's just, I really can't put into words how broken I felt not being able to bear a child. And now it's just so obviously clear to me that I was meant to adopt and to have these two beautiful, amazing children. and ... to become a trauma recovery coach, because there's a lot of inherent trauma with building a family through adoption. So, there's a lot of loss that you have to help these kids work through.
Yeah.
And I can see how I was chosen for them, but equally they were chosen for me. I did a lot of my own personal healing. I learned how to set a lot of boundaries. I learned how to use my voice. I learned what my truth was, and I trusted my knowing when it came to other people's opinions about how I was parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of that clearly was divine intervention. But when you're in it, not
Yeah.
only do you not see it, but if somebody tells you that, you'd want to just punch them in the face. You're like, if I had $1 for every piece of advice I had been given, and I just really thought I was supposed to get pregnant. And then I literally just had an epiphany one day, and I was like, what is it that I really, really want? Is it that I really, really want to be pregnant? Or do I really, really want to be a mom?
Right.
I really didn't care about being pregnant.
Right.
I will never know what that felt like, but there's no part of me that ever has even an ounce of longing and yearning that I missed out on that experience. So for me, personally, from my personal experience and my personal life, that was a non-issue. I just wanted a child. I wanted to raise someone. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted that interconnected experience. And so I remember going to my husband and saying, I think we're supposed to adopt. And he was like, hold up. Like, because I just didn't really want it. I didn't even go down. I didn't do any infertility treatments because we had a lot of issues in our family with extra hormones. The women in my family that took extra hormones didn't do well with it.
Mhm.
So I kept pumping the brakes on getting started. And the closer I got to the date we agreed upon, the more anxious I was getting. And that was a clear sign to me. I was going up against what I really wanted authentically. And I had to really learn how to use my voice in that situation.
Cool.
Love that.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up, but thank you so very much. Number one, for coming into my life. See, I'm going to cry.
Oh,
But for being here today. I wouldn't be where I am today without you.
wow. Thank you.
Okay, Laura, take it away.
So Stacey is so graciously offered to our guests a free 75-minute coaching session. We will have the link available in the show notes. And you see, for Angelique, it was very life-changing in this conversation. Just this here has been super eye-opening. So I hope those will take advantage of that. That's an amazing gift she's offering.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so we will make sure you guys all get access to that, as well as we do also. So Stacey, what we do is, or somebody knows, we have the guest introduce the guest for next week to kind of normalize bringing women together. So if you would be willing to,
I love that. Of course. All right. So, celebrated by audiences nationwide as a thoughtful, engaging, and generous teacher, best-selling author Chris Miller speaks about financial freedom, second chances, and how to thrive in an uncertain economy. Chris Miller's life is centered on service to others and is built on the foundation of her own second chance. Mansions and forest fires, #1 records, and a 3,000-mile barefoot journey across America. Wow, I want to tune into this.
Right?
$1 million of chemotherapy, and an enduring legacy, building and protecting people's financial security. Chris's stories are at once heartbreaking and uplifting. Along the way, Chris has saved more than 6,000 families from tragedy and financial ruin. She's been called the legacy wealth strategist for the simple yet powerful workshops and keynote presentations she delivers to community groups, corporations, and governments. Chris has designed programs that transform people's relationships to money, debt, security, estate planning, and creating lives of celebration. In her private practice, no one has lost a single penny. Many others have learned how to create income they will never outlive and how to face the financial uncertainty of physical and mental health as we grow into our golden years. Chris has been featured guest on hundreds of radio and TV programs, published in hundreds of print and online publications, and spoken on stages across the country for companies and top financial organizations. She's a certified senior advisor, a legal document assistant or LDA, and she's been nominated for Woman of the Year and Best Customer Service by the Chamber of Commerce. She sounds amazing.
She is amazing. She is amazing.
Wow.
So yeah, and I want to just reiterate that this free offer that Stacey is so graciously providing. Just go to her website, flipyourmindset.com, and you'll find the information there for the free 75-minute coaching session, and it will definitely. I can't guarantee that everyone's life is going to change, but I think that it's worth the 75-minute investment to find out if there's something that Stacey can help you with. So take advantage of it. Even if you don't think you got any trauma, let me just say, neither did I. So at least not childhood trauma. I knew I had adult trauma, but the childhood trauma I didn't even realize.
But the adult trauma is unresolved, unprocessed emotions and coping strategies that then lead us into circumstances, relationships, events in our adulthood that we also find a hard time processing because we didn't learn how to do it. And we're using old coping strategies in those circumstances.
Yes.
Wow. I love
Also,
that.
we'll be sure to include links for the book that Stacey mentioned earlier. And that's his latest book, isn't it?
This is his latest book. It's called The Myth of Normal. It's Gabor Mate. And I actually am on pre-order for the next book to be released in the US, which is next week, which is called Scattered Minds. And that is all about ADHD, which I also manage in this household. So I'm really, I've always jived with everything he said. I feel like I can finish every sentence. A lot. So I'm really excited to see his take on this. I have a deep understanding of what it is, but I'd like to dive into it. So I'm excited for that.
And the book we were reading when we met was called The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
And highly recommend. And there's a bunch of books that Stacey also recommended to me that I'll include those in the show notes as well. But don't necessarily wait for the show notes. Go to flipyourmindset.com and schedule that appointment as soon as you can. It will make a difference in your life. It will.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And thank you for coming. And last ask today is please subscribe to our channel and share so that we can increase our subscriptions and watch times and all of those good things that we need. Linda Thompson, she says, I'm in. Yeah. Yes, we all have those. We all have them.
Really do.
All right. Thanks, Linda. And thank you again, Stacey, for being here with us. And it's been a wonderful, almost an hour. This is one of our longest.
Right. This is one of our longest ones. Yeah. So it's a great topic and, always.
It's an important topic.
Yeah.
I think so. And I'm really on a mission to get the word out to as many people as possible that if you are stuck and nothing is working, it could just really go all the way back to the beginning. And working with a trauma-informed therapist or a trauma-informed coach is really your first step in trying to understand why.
Yeah. And that was one of the other things too. I'm glad you said that because that I wanted to point out. I've also been in therapy when did I first start therapy? Was in the late 90s. And I've been in therapy off and on throughout the years, right? And most recently, right before I got together with Stacey and met her, I was seeing a therapist and was, asking questions about PTSD and complex PTSD because I had heard about that. And this particular therapist said I didn't have PTSD, that I couldn't have it because I'd never been in war.
Yeah, it's I mean, look, you and I both read The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
And when you read that book, which I highly recommend, it's by Bessel van der Kolk. He's very clear as a psychiatrist, a trained MD, that the idea of trauma really wasn't even in any kind of training for psychology, therapy in the 90s. This was really very, very new. And what he started to recognize was he was meeting with people and working with people who had not been in war, that were presenting with same PTSD symptoms as the war vets that he had been working with. And he was like, hold up, but it was so new to him. And really, for people that want to know the difference between PTSD and CPTSD, is CPTSD stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And really, it's what we talked about before. It's the duration, the intensity, it's the frequency in childhood, often, doesn't have to be in childhood, where it's just a constant. It's constant chronic stress, constant chronic stressors in your life, abusive or not, that cause that amygdala part of your brain to be switched on 24/7 and have you in that hypervigilant mode that causes you to get kind of stuck in this spot unless you know how to work it through.
Yeah. And like you said, it's not necessarily abusive. It's not even necessarily intentional. They may not even be consciously intending to cause harm. A lot of times it's just they're doing the best they can with what they have.
And they do what they know.
Right.
That's the cycle breaker. The cycle breaker is I'm doing different.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So, like you said, it's not always intentional. And I've had to do some deep digging into my own family to say, why couldn't you meet this particular need, say of protection or standing up for me or, saying no to someone in defense of me? Why couldn't you do that? I never ever interpreted that as me not being enough, but it still left me unprotected, which caused extreme hypervigilance on my point. But to go back now and say, well, what was it that they experienced that they didn't feel that they could stand up and have a voice? And was that really about me or was that really about them? And that's where really some of this surrender and this forgiveness and radical acceptance come in this process. It's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Complex.
Yeah, it really is.
But, if you're working with any professional that's not trauma informed and not seeing it and asking being compassionate and inquisitive through a trauma informed lens, there's a huge piece of the puzzle being missed.
Yeah, it is. And that was my point, was I had been in therapy with professionals for years and nobody ever knew what to ask until I met you.
I've been in therapy for 20 years and I literally had the last formal therapist I saw said to me, there's nothing I can do for you. You've got it. The only thing you need is medication, which I had started at that time. You're fine. You know what the problems were. You have good insight on it. But the difference is even with medication and all my knowledge, all my wisdom, I still had extreme panic in my system. And that was in my early 40s. And I know we're going really over, but I'll tell you this.
Okay. Okay. Well, this will be the bonus material.
In my 40s, 41, I was stuck. And when I say stuck, I mean I couldn't function. The panic attacks were lasting 24, 36, 72 hours. And when I was having them, I couldn't really do anything other than breathe. And I had like I don't know, at the time I probably had maybe a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, right? And I knew I had been through an immense stressor. It was a huge stressor. It was a very, very big thing going on in my life at the time. And I had had the name of someone for 2 years. I had had someone's card, and I had it for 2 years. Someone had given it to me that cared very much for me. And I finally called this woman because I couldn't function anymore. And she was by trade, she was a clinical hypnotherapist. And I said, I've had your number for 2 years. I'm really, really stuck. No therapist has been able to help me. I'm in deep panic. I feel like I have an Acela train running through my chest 24/7. I can't think. I can't function. And we did some hypnosis, and it gave me a lot of insight, but my somatic system was not connected to my brain, meaning I walked with an immense amount of gratitude. I had a very strong gratitude practice. I was doing all the things consciously, but it was not connecting. My physical system was on overdrive, and I could not find a way to quiet it down. And I needed to understand what was missing.
Wow.
So till I worked with somebody that understood trauma, that was not getting resolved.
Yeah. And my last therapist said the same thing too. You're doing all the right things, because I knew the right things to do.
But do you know how helpless that leaves the patient feeling? Helpless
Exactly.
and powerless. If you're telling me I'm doing all the right things and I'm still in my
I
worst
still
form,
feel this way.
I
Yes.
still can't breathe. I can't catch a full breath. I
Right.
can't literally live this way. But you're telling me this is the best I've got. Now you're either have somebody that says bullshit, which was me, or you have somebody that says, well, I guess I'm just stuck forever. Or this is the worst, is when the person walks away and goes, I guess I'm just so broken. There's no getting fixed.
Yeah.
And you know what? I just sent this to a dear friend of mine, too. Both coaches in the trauma space. I sent this over the weekend. I was on Instagram, and I came across an account for a therapist, a doctor, a psychotherapist. And she literally said in her reel, my job is to help fix broken people. And I was like, oh my God. And I sent it to my 2 friends because I knew they were going to react the same way I did. Here's the greatest difference between a coach and a therapist. A coach doesn't believe anybody's broken. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to help you put the pieces back that you left way behind here when you decided to shapeshift and meet the needs of others so they'd meet your needs conditionally. But that was the smartest thing to do at the time. You're not broken. You're just not whole right now. Let's just go back and find those pieces. Let's reconnect those bridges that we talked about.
Yes.
For a professional to say, I help fix broken people, that's the problem right there and then.
Yeah.
Because there's also becomes a judgment. Guess what? We're all broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me included. We're all a work in progress. Once you start saying that, now you're creating a hierarchy as I'm not and you are. Coaches are here. We all are. Here's the path I took. Let me take you down that path.
Yeah.
Let me stand with you side by side. I'm going to show you where I was broken. Let's talk about it. Tell me about how you're feeling.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah. I love that. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Another, not analogy necessarily, but, I heard recently about, all these athletes, for instance. They always have a coach. No matter how successful they get, they continue to have a coach. And so that isn't stigmatized. They have a coach. They're expected to have a coach. If they didn't have a coach, something is wrong, and that coach is there to point out where, they can make improvement, where if they're struggling in, for instance, not reaching a particular achievement, showing them ways, how to visualize that. And I just thought that was, for me, that was really eye-opening, because that's so true. Linda Thompson says she's booked. That's awesome.
Good job.
Thank
Looking
you so
forward
much,
to it,
Linda.
Linda.
But that I forgot what I was
Well,
talking
you're
about.
talking
Linda,
about
I'm so
coaching and athletes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know any Olympic athletes, but being in the space of hypnosis, my understanding is there's very few Olympic athletes that don't use hypnosis as a form of moving
Wow.
forward, and use coaches that guide with
Yeah.
hypnosis to get to their goal.
Yes. Yeah. We,
Yeah.
good thing. Good thing. I know in the corporate environment, because I used to work in a corporate uh, coaching firm and specific to healthcare. It was very, if they hired a coach for you as an executive, something's wrong.
Mm.
And so if you were working with a coach, that meant you were in trouble,
Mm.
or you weren't doing something right and you needed help. Versus, hey, we've promoted you. We know you've never done this before. Here's someone to help coach you, which
Yeah.
makes total sense,
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of people fought getting a coach, even if their company was going to pay for it, because then their colleagues might see them as, again, broken, or in some way deficient. So
They never,
Crazy, right?
never considered themselves to be the trauma, right? I say all the time, I got PTSD from corporate.
one of the coaches that was there, she was in the process of becoming a certified coach, had PTSD from a former corporate position. So come on.
Yeah. Oh, we could
Well,
talk about
okay.
it for days.
We could. So we appreciate the extra 10 bonus minutes we just got with you. And I love those glasses. When you first
Thank you.
put them on, I was so distracted by them. I was like, okay, pay attention to what she's saying, because those glasses are adorable. I love them. So I hope people will come back. If you're not watching, come back and watch so you can see Stacey's cute glasses. So again, thank you. And we will see you guys next week with our Chris Miller. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.